All righty, well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:35. We'll begin with attendance. Tess?
Yes, here.
Kelly, I believe, is still not here. Ren?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
And Catherine is here. All right. So first item on the agenda is review and approve the committee minutes. Motion A, approve the GTLNC March 1st, 2022 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes. Do I have a first?
First, Tess.
Thank you, Tess. Do I have a second?
Ren.
Sorry, Ren.
That's right. Go ahead.
Thank you. We'll go with Ren. All right. Any discussion on this matter? If you are a member of the public, go ahead and raise your hand. If you have commentary. Lee, I see your hand is up. Go ahead. You can unmute.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
I was just going to secondary, but it's already been secondary, the motion, so I'm off. I mean, you know what I mean. I raised my hand.
Yeah, no problem. Lee, you're not technically a member of the committee.
The
So
secondary,
you
the
can't
motion. I'm
first and second motions tonight,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that. I didn't
Ren,
know.
I see your hand up. Go ahead. Ren, did you have your hand up for the minutes?
Yes, I did. Item 7 on the minutes, item A, update possible letter of action requesting City Council support legislation, removing statute of limitations. Do we have a reference to that City Council legislation?
I will bring that up later. No, not a specific city council legislation. I've been discussing this with Lee, and I'll have more information in a minute, which may make this moot, at least for now.
Okay, thanks.
Ren, to clarify, that might have been poor phrasing on my part in agenda drafting. We're not necessarily asking them to support existing legislation, but to potentially draft legislation that would affect that.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wondered if there was some reference that we need to put in the minutes or not. And if there isn't, why we don't need to worry about it.
Kelly has just arrived.
Yes, I just promoted her to panelist. So it is 6:37.
Hi,
Kelly?
sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no problem. It happens. We are currently discussing motion A, which is minutes from March.
Okay.
Jonathan Gregory, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the chance to speak. I would like to request that you change a sentence. I'll read the sentence to you, and then I'll tell you why I believe you should change it. The sentence is at the bottom of the draft minutes, and it's just above where it says meeting adjourned. So it's the last item. It says request to add Jonathan Gregory as a member or enforce public comment time allowance limits. Jonathan will consider. I request you to change that because it to me looks very disrespectful. My idea, it was Ren who spoke and said these things. I'm not in control of public time. I don't have the mute button. And I don't disrespect the public space, which this is. It insinuates, the way the sentence reads, that either I should join as a member or there needs to be some restriction on public comment time. I don't believe that our neighborhood council has any problem with its stakeholders. That's patterned. Occasionally we have somebody, but I don't like that sentence because it looks as if I'm responsible for having done something wrong. I'm just a stakeholder, and I generally believe my contribution has been a constructive one. Thank you.
Did you have a request for how to change the sentence?
If you understand what it is I'm saying that I don't like about it, I think anyone can figure out. I don't care if it isn't even there. I just don't think that's the way we refer to our stakeholders. We don't say either join or let's change the public comment limits. That's not how we say things. It makes it look like the two issues are connected. They're not. You can do what you want with public comment time within reason of the law. And
So,
I can join as a
Jonathan,
member, but it has
I will
nothing.
say, and I can let Ren speak for himself on this one, but I will say the comment was made because we were allowing the public, which yes, on this committee is primarily you, to participate at the same amounts of time as the committee itself, which is not in line with the way that the actual public comment limits are set. And, you know, technically it's supposed to be 1 minute per person on each agenda item. According to the way the agenda has been written, it does say that at the heading of each section, how much time for public comment is given on the agenda items. But, you know, it is an ongoing discussion that we've had, not just on this committee, but amongst the board about the question of whether in the event that we try to enforce public comment times, if we have not been doing it effectively, then at the time we would start enforcing it, it would give the appearance that we were doing it in response to an individual rather than to actually adhere to our rules. And Ren, I do see your hand up, so go ahead. You might need to unmute.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I think you summarized it well. I don't know that it was, I didn't intend it to be derogatory necessarily towards Jonathan, but we have rules and requirements in terms of how we operate our committees. And it just seems if we start allowing one person to just participate as if they were a committee member, it begs the question, why don't we just let whoever shows up participate fully in the conversations? And I think that that would be very difficult in terms of managing our agendas and managing our time. So I would hope Jonathan would want to be on the committee. There's, I don't know what the downside would be for him not to actually be a participating member of the committee. He shows up, it seems every month. He has a wide range of things he wants to talk about. So, but if he doesn't want to be on the committee, then I think we need to treat him equally to other people and give them the time that they are allowed to comment at the beginning and then before each item is discussed, and then that's it, and not participate in the ongoing conversation back and forth.
I don't think either one, you're re-debating. It's as if we're having the meeting over again. My issue isn't what was said at the meeting. We're talking about the minutes, and the minutes connect the two issues. I'm not responsible for public comment time. That's you, Catherine. You're the chair. I'm simply objecting to the sentence. It's not respectful to a stakeholder.
And Jonathan, if you have a specific suggestion for how to rephrase it, I would love to hear it. At this time, I'm going to...
It's two issues. You just say request Jonathan Gregory as a member, period. Consider enforce public current, whatever it says, comment time allowance limits. It's two separate issues. What do I have to do with it? It's not me or that. So we don't have to re-debate the issue. It's just the minutes. It's a very disrespectful sentence to insinuate.
Okay. Well, and thank you for offering a suggestion for how to rephrase. Tess, go ahead.
Hi. So with all due respect to everybody here, public comment per item agenda at our general board meetings is 3 minutes per speaker per agenda item. Somehow, I guess here on our meeting, it's been limited to 1. I would mention that we're not exactly at high risk of over participation within the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. We have an average of 1 member of the public per
And to Jonathan's point just now, we shouldn't be relitigating the issue. This is a question of how we should phrase it in the minutes.
Okay, that's true. But then I would also like to add, because this point needs to be raised, that it's at, the amount of public comment time is at the discretion of the chair. And you and I are co-chairs, Catherine. So that's at our discretion. So yes, we can change the sentence, Jonathan. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and change the sentence.
And in the effort just of like time and time management, would it be better if we just were to simply omit it and then move forward? And then with respect to the issue at hand, with what Jonathan is trying to say is, it would seem that there are two separate ends in terms of enforcing the public comment time. If that wants to be something separate later on down, we should absolutely discuss it. But for the purposes of time, would it be safer just to simply omit this and move forward? I just don't know if that would be wise.
I mean, I tend toward wanting to have the information discussed in the meeting in the minutes, but
Understood.
if the rest
And
of
that
the
makes
committee
sense.
feels that it's easier to remove it, before we make that decision, there is one more hand up. Joanne, you can go ahead and speak.
Hi, thank you. I just find it curious. Like to me, I have to kind of support what Jonathan's saying. It does feel a little bit offensive for the stakeholders, because I can see like the main meeting. Yes, you get 3 minutes, but that's also a very full. They're big, long meetings. I can understand the push for time constraint. I get it, but for committee meetings where it allows the community to hash certain topics out, you get more. You should have more public time for the public to speak at committee meetings than you do the main meeting. So it feels almost like it is. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of not wanting to hear from the public or it being like a way to push back on the public, but it can be taken like that. Like that's how. Especially because I know these meetings, I don't know about this committee particularly, but I know in different meetings, it can get pretty contentious, and to sit there and try to push back at all on the voice of the stakeholders, I think it's a big mistake. I don't think it's good form. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. I will remind everyone, we're not litigating the issue. We're not litigating the issue. We're just discussing how to put it in the minutes. So I'll hand it over to the rest of the committee. Do we feel like we want to simply remove that sentence?
That would be easiest unless Jonathan gives us language. Like
Jonathan did give us language, which was basically to separate it into two distinct sentences that are on separate lines, which I'm fine with that.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Equally fine with me.
I'd like to move that we just remove the sentence completely from the minutes. It's not necessary to be in there, I don't think. And it's if it's contentious, why we should just remove it entirely.
Okay, Kelly?
I think that Jonathan feels, my sense is what I hear is that you feel slighted, Jonathan, and I don't think that was anyone's intention. So I would defer to what he would prefer in terms of what's in there.
Why don't we go ahead and remove it then? All right. Any other discussion on the minutes? I see David Wheatley's hand up. David, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, David Wheatley, stakeholder. The minutes are just supposed to be a report of what happened during a meeting, and they're being tested for accuracy. It's not whether these issues need to be redebated. It's just, is this what happened? Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, I think there's not really a debate that this was not what was said. That's just whether or not including in the minutes in its current form is as respectful as it could be. So we'll go ahead, we'll remove it. Do we want to go ahead and vote on the minutes?
Sure.
All right. On motion A, approve the GTLNC March 1st, 2022 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes as amended. How do you vote? Tess?
Yes, as amended.
Kelly?
Yes.
Ren,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Motion carries 500. Minutes as amended are approved. Okay, which brings us to public comment period. For any members of the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda but relevant to governmental affairs, please go ahead and raise your hand now. You'll have 2 minutes per speaker. All right. David Wheatley, you can go ahead and unmute.
Great, thank you very much. David Wheatley, stakeholder in Toluca Lake. I've been studying government for a while, ever since I took it in my undergraduate years. And the principles have always been the same. The powerful try to get elected, and when they do, they reward their friends and punish their enemies. And the way they punish their enemies is by making sure the public doesn't get to speak, writing the information down wrong in the minutes, shortchanging people during public comment, changing it from 2 minutes to 1 minute partway through, thereby shortchanging the people that come with the 1 minute, and thereby favoring the people that come with the 2 minutes. They accept campaign contributions without telling people where they're coming from. They punish and reward their friends. And so and this has been happening for decades. It's really important to me that we set up some clean government in Toluca Lake and make sure that people are disclosing their conflicts of interest. And if somebody has a profession and where their reputation is enhanced by voting a particular way, that needs to be disclosed before they vote, or they need to recuse themselves from the meeting. And if anybody's had ex parte communications with anybody that has anything to do with a decision that has to be made or voted on, that needs to be disclosed, the length of the conversation, the day and the date and the comments, the content and who was there. So I really hope we can do a better job of cleaning things up. And if they won't clean it up in Washington or Sacramento or LA, let's clean it up right here in Toluca Lake. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. I will remind everybody that the 1 minute and 2 minute differences are clearly stated on the agenda. The idea is that during public comment time at the beginning, that's a time when someone can put in a request for us to address something at a future meeting or to ask a question. And that is why there is more time given, because it is something that we might be unaware of and might need a little more information on. Joanne, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Item that's coming up about, I think it's item 7. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to read the agenda. Is that because it kind of sounded like it might be tabled, and if it's not going to be tabled, I'll wait and give my comments for that. But if it is going to be tabled, I would like to address something that's some kind of about that. So I don't know whether to address it now, or is there going to be
the item in item number 7 is new business and future projects. And the thing that we have here is identifying standing rules to draft. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's the one about asking for about the I can't think of what it about asking them to make laws to help protect the senior adults.
Yes, that is actually part of our ongoing business. So we will be discussing that later.
Okay, so that will definitely be on, because I want to stay on agenda, speak. I know you wanted to speak on the agenda item, but it kind of sounded like it may have been possibly tabled.
May I clarify? I think we can table this so Joanne can leave the meeting if she wishes. Can we bump that item up after public comment and then dispose of it?
I mean, I don't know if we'll dispose of it. It depends on what the update is, but yeah, we can move that up to be first after public comment.
All right. Well, I'll address Joanne.
Okay, so you're going to make it the first thing so I can speak on it as the agenda item? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's your job.
All right.
Okay, then I'll withhold my comment until the agenda item is called. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Any other public comment? All right, great. Then we'll move into committee member news and announcements related to governmental affairs. Any committee member news and announcements?
There's a bunch of workshops and items being put on by SCAG, but they're probably more related to planning and land use. So I will announce them in that meeting. But there's some government affairs crossover. Ren, you probably get these email notifications from SCAG. Housing policy production, accelerating housing policy production. I think that's going to be more appropriate for the Planning and Land Use Committee. So that's it for me.
Yeah, let's bring that up at Planning and Land Use. And if you would just send me the references you're talking about. I get some stuff from SCAG, but I don't think I've seen what you're talking about.
I'll send it. Sure.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Then we'll dive into our ongoing business. And as we just mentioned, we're going to swap items A and B. So we'll begin with discussion regarding the possible letter of action to request the LA City Council support legislation to remove a statute of limitations on prosecuting or bringing civil suit regarding elder abuse. So Tess, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. This will be very brief, and I've spoken to Lee a lot about this and done some research, and I appreciate this being agendized. But before the meeting and during my research leading up to the meeting, some other information has come to light that I want to analyze before I make a recommendation here. And if that seems to support further discussion, then I will raise it again. But for now, I'm happy to move on to the next agenda item. So that's it. But of course, if Joanne wishes to comment, she should.
Yes, thank you. Just in case I can't get to the next meeting, I don't know how much everyone's aware of these cases. I've been helping him through this for the past 5-6 years. But right now, the issue that I am seeing the most is a lack of government accountability and transparency. Like it's at so many different levels. And right now it's with the district attorney's office. We cannot get FOIA requests even acknowledged, not answered. We're trying to find out just different, when the complaints are filed, they disappeared. In fact, the whole case right now, where they're saying they can't even find the entire anything on this entire case. And it's at the point, it's almost like it's personal. And I had a discussion with the DA that did not help him, and she made it that it was personal. So and so we are trying to help him in different in this situation, but there has to be, it's not even about trying to get, there is statute of limitations. And I don't even think that's the real issue. That I'm not saying it's not an issue, but we really have to push for government transparency. And I know, and accountability. How is somebody victimized and have everything taken from them? And it's just like they don't like you, or you're poor, or what, you don't have the right lawyer, whatever, and you don't get help. It's just it's unjust. And I would hope that, as not just because he's on your committee, but just because there's anyone who's either a senior or their senior, or anyone could be a victim, and to have the government have such they have such discretion in who they can help or not help, who they can prosecute or not prosecute. But there's no accountability, and there's no real transparency. And that is a battle that we all need, because anyone on that board, any of you could become a victim of the, and the government not do its job. And then when you try to complain, your complaints get lost, or, your FOIA requests are ignored. This is frightening. And it's happening to people because they don't have, the money for high-end lawyers.
And Joanne, do you have a specific thing that you are requesting that we request, like
Yes.
setting up?
Yes, that you guys would write a letter. I don't know even about write a letter, but that you would take a stand that whether it's the police or that the government be authentic and transparent, and because there's victims that are dropping through the cracks. Okay. And because there's no accountability. I think as a neighborhood council,
perhaps,
used to be holding the county accountable. You know what I mean? Like we should be asking them for accountability or demanding accountability, because I guarantee you, he's not the only victim in your council district that's been
Okay, so
victimized.
so perhaps it ought to be something where maybe we're requesting a specific individual that is in charge of oversight in these
Yes,
cases
Yes, let me put, that's a good point, because I
in order
can't
to
even find
centralize
out.
information and
Yeah,
management of
and
these
who is
cases.
even like and who is even over, like, I don't even know, there's no one knows who you could, like, if you have a complaint against the prosecutor's office, we cannot, nobody knows who they answer to. I can't get that answer. I mean, I'm hoping maybe you guys can. Who do we complain, like, who's above the prosecutor that is an oversight? You know what I mean? I can't find it. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, I'm just
Okay.
somebody who's trying to help a person that needs help. But there's no, like, if you guys can even find out who's the oversight for the prosecutor's office, that would be
Yeah,
great.
we'll go ahead and look into that, Joanne. And don't say your email out loud. This is all being recorded and put on YouTube, but you can go ahead and email Tess or myself. Our emails are on the GTLNC.org website. It's just Tess.Taylor@GTLNC.org, Catherine.Hatton@GTLNC.org. So that we can get back to you about looking into who does oversight for the prosecutor's office.
Joanne, just to close it out, because I've been looking into this quite a lot.
Yes.
I believe, but I would need to confirm that probably the best accountability for the district attorney would be the public integrity unit of the Attorney General's office. But I can scope that out a little bit more for you and, share with you what I've learned. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to do the legwork to save you any time and energy. I just don't know who to go to, because nobody has been able to give me the answers. And I've been asking government officials. It's very strange. It's like there's no oversight, and that's all we want. We just want justice for, if there's people who aren't high, they're seniors or they're protected adults class status, disabled. I'm a disability advocate, and there needs to be help for these people that are being lost, through the cracks. So thank you for listening to me. Tess, you have my email, right? So I could just leave it in your hands.
Okay.
And yeah, if you could give me that name, if you want to look into it, or I'll be happy to look into it more. I just need a lead to know how to.
Joanne, send
Yes.
your request to me and Catherine at the same time, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody.
Our
Thank you so
GTLNC
much.
Our GTLNC addresses. Okay, she's all right. Okay, very good. We're working on it.
Okay. Tess, do you want to clarify at all what you've encountered that's made you want to table this before we do anything else?
I have new information that is, it's a little unclear what the next step is, because I've learned more about the case. And I think there's some prejudice there, and I need to dig into it. So I don't know that it's an appropriate issue for the Government Affairs Committee now or not. So I'd rather.
Well, I guess the question is, are you talking about the specific case or the letter of action? Because I think handling the specific case may not be Governmental Affairs Committee purview, but the letter of action and what maybe needs to be requested that the city change might be something that Governmental Affairs would be interested in. And, the reason it's come to our attention is the specific case, but that doesn't mean there's not something that we all have an investment in as citizens of the city.
Well, the specific thing that Lee is asking for is an increase in the statute of limitations for
Yes.
Prosecuting these types of cases. And that's an easy lift if we want to ask for it. But there's a lot more to his case. So, I mean, we can do that now. We can, that would be fine. But it's the, let's see, it's the, I'll tell you which law it is. It's, I've been researching elder abuse legislation. It's the Welfare and Institutions Code, Public Social Services. So, but like I said, I mean, I've run into a lot of stuff in the last couple of days reading over this, and I want to discuss it more with Lee before we move down that path, which is still an option.
Okay,
All right.
great. Any other discussion on this or any questions on it before we move on with the agenda?
And that, I just have a quick question for clarity. And that she was talking about specifically the FOIA request, that's FOIA request, correct?
Freedom of Information Act request. Yes.
Exactly. I just wanted to make sure that we were clarifying that. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have discussion regarding SB 1100, which is a proposal to amend the Brown Act, primarily related to disruption at public meetings and handling that disruption. Ren, you had requested that we start tracking this. Do you have anything specific that you wanted to highlight in it, or that you think it's important that we potentially make comment on?
Well, I just spotted it as something in the hopper. Most of the state legislation right now is early on, and we don't necessarily need to spend time on it yet, but we need to track it, because if it, as it goes through the legislative process, they could add stuff, take stuff out that would impact our meetings and our programs. So we need to just track it. And, I don't think, as I say, I don't think it's time yet for us to really spend a lot of time analyzing it, especially in our meetings. But by July or August, we should be well aware of what's in it and whether it has a chance to pass or not. That's the other thing. Oftentimes, there's thousands literally of state legislative bills that get introduced, and relatively few of them actually get through. So, we need to spend our time on those things that really have some chance of getting through. And if it impacts us, we need to either stand up and say yes or no. But anyway, just wanted to get it on our agenda so that, we track it going forward.
And other than the state legislative site, Ren, do you get email notifications from the state site?
It's kind of hit or miss. I get, I don't think it's systematic. Probably because there's just so much going on. One of the things too, I'd like our Governmental Affairs Committee to become more interactive with our state senator and assembly person, and have their staff kind of working with us on issues that we think are important. They're obviously much closer to it, and they can sometimes give us an insight. So that's one of the elements here. I'd like to see our committee invite the legislative analysts from our state reps to show up at our meetings, and if we have items like this Brown Act item, have them comment on it and tell us what's what the thinking is behind it.
Sounds good.
All right. I do see a hand up from the public. David, you can go ahead and speak.
Great, thank you very much, David Wheatley. Yeah, I found with these bills, while they do have thousands of them, maybe not thousands, but a lot, it's a legislator's dream to have groups like this postpone discussing things, because that way they can spring it on the legislature in the middle of the night and get it passed with no input from us. So I would encourage this group to never say that. We're never going to put this stuff off. And the time we talk about putting things off, we could talk about what this is. What exactly are they up to? And let's hear about it so we can be working on it in advance. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on this? I will say I'm guessing that it's been in response to some issues that have arisen with regard to Zoom bombing of meetings.
I think so. I think it's a big impetus.
Yeah, that's part of it, because it's one thing to have someone come into a meeting and disrupt it, but have to actually physically be there. It's another thing to dial in from literally anywhere on earth and, interrupt a meeting when you are not actually, you don't have a purpose to the interruption. It's merely a diversion that evening or morning.
Be it wherever they are at.
Well, if
Yeah.
disruption is defined, I mean, how is that going to impact Puppet?
I was gonna say, I think this is kind of in reference to Puppet with us. I mean, I think that if they are able to, if they recognize and everyone recognizes that this, I'm assuming the way that this is going to work is that everyone will have to kind of acknowledge that this is happening, maybe do a first, a second, and then that person no longer can speak based on their interruptions.
Yeah, I mean, so they do say here, willfully interrupting means intentionally engaging in behavior that substantially impairs or renders infeasible the orderly conduct of the meeting in accordance with law and applicable rules. It includes, but is not limited to, a failure to comply with reasonable regulations prohibiting force, threats of force, or intimidation, or a threat against another person's free exercise and enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to them by the California Constitution, state laws, or United States Constitution and laws. So I don't know if Puppet would quite qualify because Puppet followed all of the rules. But there are some other people that have interrupted meetings in more intimidating or forceful ways. And, if Puppet were, say, refusing to comply with rules regarding profanity or something, that might be cause, but yeah. I think it feels like a very broad definition when you say includes but is not limited to. So I have no idea how the spirit of the law would end up being interpreted. Obviously, there are forms of protest that involve intentionally disrupting meetings that are, reasonable forms of protest that are civil and peaceful. So I'm guessing that this would not be able to interfere with that, but it might be written in such a way that it could. I don't know.
Well, I hope for the broadest possible acceptance of the public, as long as they comport themselves reasonably, respectfully. So we'll keep an eye on it, Ren.
Yeah, and I think in the event it passes, it might be worthwhile. I don't think we as a neighborhood council necessarily specifically, but for Dunn and for us as neighborhood councils to push Dunn to clarify some of it if we feel that the state legislature's bill feels too broad for us to quite understand what the limits are. I think it would be helpful to have some uniformity within neighborhood councils for what qualifies as willfully disruptive.
Well, I think it would be better to deal with the state legislature directly, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So it's hard to unring a bell.
Fair. All right, which brings us to item C, which is a discussion regarding SB 9 and SB 10 and planning and land use legislation. Now, Ren, I know you'd added this to the agenda and you had some follow-on legislation that you'd mentioned you wanted to flag in relation to these bills.
Yeah, actually, of course, SB 9 and 10 actually already passed last year. So, these are not active bills. There's follow-on legislation. And I have a laundry list of, what are there, 7 here, I think 2, 4, 6, 7 bills that have come up that seem to have, they're primarily planning issues. For example, one is to enhance density bonuses. And we've already had projects that people felt were too large for our community already. So if there's additional density bonuses, that could be problematic. Affordable housing preservation. including tax credits for apartments and mobile homes, compliance monitoring of affordable housing. There's a lot of legislation requiring affordable housing, but evidently not a lot of follow through on who's obeying the law. So they're trying to improve that. There's housing cost reduction initiative programs, and some of those just allow higher density on certain zoned properties. And I'm not sure we want to support that, but we'll keep an eye on that. Effectiveness of state low-income housing tax credit, that definitely needs to be studied. There's anyway, a lot of developers have created a whole game around how to use the tax credits, and I think that needs to be reviewed, and the public needs to be aware of what's going on. I think David Wheatley would second that. And finally, let's see. A reduction of parking requirements for religious institutions and allow development of affordable housing on the parking lots of religious institutions. There again, we need to keep an eye on that and see what impact that might have on our community. Anyway, those are some of the ones that are out there. They're in early stages, and they get dropped, they get rolled, merged together sometimes. There's horse trading that goes on. And so we need our state assembly person and our state senator to keep an eye on these kind of things for us and report to us on what's going on. So I'll be asking for that at our plum meeting and talking to them. There are also other state issues. These are all planning related, plum related. I think environmental affairs, et cetera. I mean, all public safety committee. We all have items in the state legislative process. And I don't know whether the GAC should be the clearinghouse for those concerns, or how we can help the other committees to identify the issues around their legislative problems and have an impact. We end up with, among other things, a CIS, Community Impact Statement, which goes into the city's legislative process. So kind of a two-step process. When we want to affect what's going on in Sacramento, of course, we can talk to our representatives, but we can also go to the city council and identify something in a particular piece of state legislation and ask them to either support it or oppose it through the city's legislative agenda. And that legislative agenda actually has some power in Sacramento. So that's, if we really get up in arms about a particular piece of state legislation, we would then need to draft a CIS to cover it.
So Ren, is that the actual proper term for what we'd be doing if it is something that is not a city measure? Because I know when we submit a CIS, I'm going into a city portal and I'm selecting the city council file number. If there's not a city council file number at the time we're requesting them to do something about this, how would we approach it? Would it need to be a letter of action requesting that they?
Well, what we would do is look for it in the city's, as I say, the legislative agenda, and the CAO handles that, and they track a lot of state legislation, obviously, for the various council people and the mayor, and so the city takes positions on a lot of these issues. If they have, why then we would support or oppose their position. If they haven't, we can ask them to take a position on something. And I think our councilman is, he's pretty adept at this kind of thing. So he'd know what we were talking about, and be able to help us.
Okay, yeah, so that's sort of my question, is if we don't see it in the legislative agenda, if there's not a council file number attached to it for us to say we support or we oppose this proposal that's already with the city, we would need to potentially draft a letter of action asking our city council member to take it up.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And the CAO is the Chief Administrative Officer, I think.
Yes, thank you, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess this is a question for the committee, which is, as governmental affairs, do we want to be the ones that are sort of trying to track the city and the state legislative agendas and sort of flagging things for other committees? Or do we want to be assisting other committees with liaising once those committees identify legislation of interest?
Well, in a perfect world, we'd have all the time in the world, which we don't. So, and as Ren said, and he's right, there are literally thousands of bills coming down the pike. So I just hear about them here and there and research and read up on what I can. I go to the analysis portal of the state website and to the legislative analyst at the city website to see what's going on there. I wouldn't want to be responsible for flagging legislation to specific committees other than planning and land use. Not because I don't want to, but because I can't possibly, this entire committee couldn't possibly be responsible for that much.
Right.
Only on a, as we see things, like, for example, Catherine, there's a bill that I think should be agendized on environmental, which is, let's see, I just heard about this. Hold on, I'm trying to find the bill number. That's how many bills there are. Henry Stern, SB 1404. It finally puts teeth back into the law and states that removing 3 oak trees constitutes a significant impact on the environment. And that's because oak trees are considered a keystone plant. So it's trying to bring some environmental, it's trying to keep trees from being chopped down willy-nilly. And yeah, so maybe Ren, you have a suggestion how we can, I just read about, I read a lot, but I don't have the answer to how to keep up with all this legislation.
Yeah, I think
and I think it's not possible.
No, it's not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think what we need to do is ideally have different people with different committees flag the things that they're concerned about and identify and educate the rest of us. In the past, the Governmental Affairs Committee has filed the CISs for GTLNC. I suspect that was because we had somebody who knew how to do it. It's a little bit arcane in the way you do that, but each committee, of course, could present their CIS directly to GTLNC, and then if the committee wanted to submit it directly, or if the secretary of GTLNC wanted to be the one filing the CISs, that would be appropriate, or our committee could take that role. And
so Ren, the difference between filing and sort of proposing a CIS, we do have a submitter. Colby and I are both authorized submitters in the city portal. But any committee can propose a CIS and it would have to be approved by the full board. Obviously, it would come up through committee and go to the full board for consideration. So I don't think that it particularly matters whether GTLNC is responsible for the actual submitting of it in the city portal. I think the question is whether we think all CISs should originate in GAC or if they should come up through the committee that oversees that subject matter. And my personal opinion is the committee overseeing that subject matter ought to be the one bringing it to the full board, since they have more expertise in those areas, they're paying more attention to that, and they do a much better job of figuring out what the CIS ought to be. Whereas if we 5 are voting on it and, you know, it's an issue that is coming from a committee that none of us are really on or are paying attention to, is it really right for the 5 of us to be deciding what language goes in the CIS initially?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And if we can get people on each of the committees who, will step up and do it, I think that's the better way to do it. I think you're right. It covers more ground, and it takes the pressure off of us in some senses. Although we will that should come under our GAC kind of oversight, but even like these planning issues, they could come out of planning directly to the full board, a write-up, a CIS to go with it, and we can go from there.
Yeah, and maybe as our committee, one of the things we could try to do in the next couple months is to put together a bit of a resource packet so that other committees can know where to look to be tracking legislation, where to find it, and a little bit of info on what the process would be for a letter of action versus a CIS, just so that people are empowered to know that these are options that their committee can do. Like, we all kind of know, but we also don't really know what the process is in a lot of cases. And I'm using the royal we. So maybe that can be one of our goals in the next couple months, is to put together information for the rest of the board to be able to know what this process is.
Always a good idea. Right now I'm working on the homeless resource guide, on some resources for planning and land use, and, going over those case files or trying to, do it thoroughly takes a lot of time. So I won't be able to help much in the next month, but after that, I would be happy to draft some things up.
All right.
Now, would it be incumbent on us to maybe be the gatekeepers for that information, in the sense that, let's say if there's someone, or I don't know, maybe that might be outreach, if someone has something that they want us to bring to our attention, or bring something to our attention, and let's say a plum thing, or if it's a public safety thing, we then can disseminate that information to those specific committees to then have the ability to address that CIS, so that, hey, if you've got something, we could, even outreach could say, hey, if you've got something that you think that needs to be addressed in any of our committees, then please bring it to our attention so that we can make sure your wants and needs get taken care of. And then we can maybe disseminate that. Maybe we could be somewhat like a gatekeeper in a way. I don't know if that's, again, like everyone said, we certainly don't have the ability to look up everything all the time, but just wanted to see if that might be an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've discussed in outreach is there's not a very clear way on our website for someone to make a request. And, we'd like to institute a way for someone to, for there to be a form on the website, contact us. I have a legislative concern. I have a question about utilities, and have a little drop down of these are the items that I think I'm interested in. And if we have a drop down for a legislative concern, then when someone submits it, it can route to the chairs of governmental, and they can say, this sounds like this committee issue, and direct it to those chairs. And likewise, if someone actually speaks at a meeting during public comment time requesting something, then at that time, we can say that is this committee and refer it on the spot.
So we couldn't have something like the My 311 app where it could just like, you could go down the drop down menu, take a look, pop, it'll automatically, then you put in your request and then it gets disseminated accordingly. Of course, in a perfect world.
Yeah, on our website. This is not
It's
an
a little
outreach meeting,
lackluster.
but
Yes.
We are working on it.
Well, the website still needs work, so we'll bring that up tomorrow in outreach. Paige hopefully will have some updates. But yeah.
All right. Anything else on the SB 9 and 10 and the follow-on planning legislation?
Yeah, Ren, can you just do a one sentence summary of each one of those for planning and land use and or government affairs so that we can carry them forward on our agenda?
Well, SB 9 and 10
No, the 6 or 7 that
were
you
last year. You're talking about the new ones?
Yes.
Yeah, the new ones, I'll set it up
Just the ones
for next month. By then, we'll have a clearer idea which ones of these are real.
Yeah, well, like the tax credit, just a quick description of what it is.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll do that for next month. Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is an update on the planned closure of the Toluca Lake Post Office.
I was just chewing a carrot. I didn't want to be heard.
How dare you?
No update. I have not heard back from John Alford or the Washington, D.C. John McDonald. So I'll have to call them again. No update on the post office.
All right. Jonathan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine. I put my hand up at the end of the SB 9, SB 10. And so if you wouldn't mind.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Things happen. To go back there, I want you to know that I would be really happy if the neighborhood council, which is exactly what you were just talking about, got better and more comfortable at the process of sending CISs out, because they speak, even though they may get nothing done, they clearly speak for the community. I think so much of what we see coming out of the state borders on insanity. It doesn't make sense to me. So I would personally really appreciate some challenges to things I see going on. Now I would like to ask a question. I have a feeling Rain will know more about it, but maybe you, Catherine, too. When I see stuff let's talk about SB 9 and SB 10, when that means Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 10. And then sometimes there's assembly bills. My question to Rain or Catherine or whoever knows most about this is a lot of the land use stuff are Senate bills, SB. What determines, or is it just by who proposes them in the state legislature? What determines what bills are assembly bills and what bills are Senate bills? In other words, are there the things in land use always defer to the Senate bill? Do you know anything about that, Ren?
It depends
on. Tess, go ahead.
Well, it depends on who proposes it, but go ahead, Ren.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's a assemblyman or a state senator who initially proposes the bill, and they get their name on the bill. Sometimes it's something that's out of left field, and one particular legislator wants to do it. Other times they are issues that have been percolating at the legislative level, and the the representatives kind of fight over whose name gets to be put on it. But the bottom line is it really doesn't matter too much who's proposing it. Well, I won't get into a lot of the politics. Anyway, the bottom line is it has to go first to either the Assembly or the Senate, wherever the bill is originated. And then once it passes there, then it goes to the other house. So if we wanted an efficient legislative system, we'd have a unicameral system where we wouldn't have a Senate and an Assembly. But anyway, you started on that. So the bottom line is it goes from then one to the other and has to be passed in both in order for it to become legislation. and well, like the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. So a lot happens during that process, and
Ren, what's our district in the state called? Is that 39? Are we Toluca Lake? What is our state district? Do you know that?
Aren't we 46th with Adrian Nazarian?
That's
Yeah,
our
that's the
assembly
assembly.
district
49?
is assembly. No, sorry, our assembly district is 46. Although we do have test. Can you remind me? Rivas is, there's this tiny portion up in like Toluca Woods, I think, that is another.
Well,
assembly
I believe we've just been we've been redistricted assembly wise too, because Laura Friedman, who previously was over in Burbank, is running. So I don't have a full grasp of what the new assembly districting is at the moment, but Adrian Nazarian is 46th. So that I
And
do.
Bob Hertzberg is Senate District 18, I believe.
But another thing, Jonathan, is that the Assembly and Senate bills, they're numbered numerically, chronologically as they occur with every 2-year term. So the numbers start again, at 1 with each new.
Okay. So if we're writing a CIS, then how many representatives would we have to, would we be writing, or is it just to the, how does a CIS, Catherine, who gets the CIS? Like if it's about SB 9, let's pretend SB 9 was still being legislated and we wanted to write a CIS on that, for example, would we be writing to the person who proposed it or to our representative?
So for a CIS, we would actually be submitting to the City Council of Los Angeles, and we'd be submitting to the full
Right.
City Council.
Right.
And we would be requesting that they take up action in relation to it, that they take a position on it.
No,
We
right.
have the option of writing a letter of action to our assemblyman or assembly person or our Senate representative. But those wouldn't be, technically speaking, CISs. I don't
Okay.
believe. Ren, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it's yeah, I've forgotten what we call them. We've done it once.
I think I was told letter of action is what they get called.
Well, they would simply go to whoever is, wherever the pressure is needed most, because sometimes it's known who, it's known what the leanings of the Senate is, and it's less known what the leanings of the assembly members are, or it's known that by pressuring these 5 guys or these, these people have, I think a letter of action or a CIS can be directed to either or both.
No, because CIS is a technical term, Tess. It's a specific thing that we do with the City of Los Angeles. They have a CIS submitting system. Like it's a specific thing.
Okay, so for the city, but there's no
Yeah.
reason a letter of action could be sent to both the Assembly and the Senate.
Correct. I do think it's best to send to the assembly people or person, depending on how the districts end up, to the actual ones that represent us. Like we wouldn't be sending it to whoever sponsored the bill unless that is our representative. Because I think, if we're writing to someone in Bakersfield, they're really not going to care what Toluca Lake thinks.
Catherine, for those neighborhood councils who wrote that, what's his name, Gascon, they wrote letters that were called, I forget the words, like failure of not supporting them. I can't remember. What would those have been? There were neighborhood councils who wrote letters of non-confidence. That's what they call them. Would that be CIS too?
It would depend. If they were actually voted on as community impact statements and submitted through the city's community impact statement portal, in relation to specific council action, like had council file numbers that they were attaching those to, they may have been CISs. It's more likely they were simply letters of action or letters of non-competence. But if there is a city file that is related to it, especially an active one that potentially once a CIS is passed on a neighborhood council, a representative of that neighborhood council could go speak at a meeting where that council file is agendized to be discussed. You know, that would be an opportunity,
Right.
but I don't know off the top of my head if they attached it to any particular council file to make it a
You're right. You made
CIS,
me
as
remember
opposed to simply
there
a
was
letter.
something in the city council going on then, and that's what they did. You make me remember a lot when you're speaking, and you're right. That's exactly what happened. There was something going on in city council. So probably if I started reading the city council agendas, that would be helpful to watch what's happening. So we would have a best chance at influencing when it was being handled by the city council. Is that right? Am I
Yes.
understanding it? Okay.
That's correct, although I will just give you a big warning that city council agendas aren't necessarily published in time for us as a neighborhood council to always take action before something is decided. Not necessarily
Right.
all the time, but sometimes. And also, I find it difficult. I mean, we talked a little bit about how many bills and things are proposed at the state level, but even at the city level, there's just so much that goes on and that comes up and then disappears, and it is very difficult to track. So I commend anyone who is capable of it.
Thanks.
All right, David, I see your hand up as well. Should be able to unmute. Oh.
Okay, thank you. I've become a student of agendas, much to the chagrin of the people who create the agendas. And I'm noticing that under C, 6C, discussion of SB 9 and SB 10, I hear some noise in the background. Yeah, it says SB 9 and SB 10, but it sounds like Rin was using the term follow-on bills. The ones he described did not sound like follow-on bills to me. It sounds like, oh, technical corrections. Follow-on bill, these are potentially devastating bills that are just as bad as SB 9 and 10 and the rest of them. And I think they should be characterized as such and agendized so that people know what to show up for. Yeah, if I were to look at this, I would just say, hey, we oppose SB 9 and 10 because it's doing a devastation to Toluca Lake, but instead we're getting to hear about all these other bills. So this, I mean, if this weren't a pattern and practice, I wouldn't get so ticked about it that things are left off here. If you could please do a better job and make it more comprehensive, just take a little bit more time. If you have the stuff in time for the notes for the meeting, you have it in time to put it on the agenda, please put it on. Thanks.
Yes, I mean, I think these are bills that are related. They're related to SB 9 and SB 10. That's why Ren is bringing them up as something to pay attention to. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the post office. Which I don't know if there's any further commentary. Obviously, Tess has been working really hard to get in touch with someone in our Congressman Sherman's office, but
yeah, I mean, I've connected with John Alford and then his the chief of staff in the Washington DC office. There have been 3 or 4 communications, but John Alford delegated to someone in his office and has not responded to me yet. So I've followed up several times, frankly, many times, and I will continue to do so. So I'm about ready to, well, I have an idea how to get through to them this time. So no update. And that's it.
all right, great. Then last up is new business, future projects. So the first thing on here, the only thing technically on the agenda is identifying standing rules that we think are important for us to, oh, I'm so sorry, David, I I missed your hand. Did you have something on the post office?
I did, yeah, thanks. I also got missed on AB 9 and SB 9 and 10 at the time, along with Jonathan. So, yeah, okay. Tess, thanks for your above and beyond on this. Federal post office sounds like federal issues, and we have Congress people and a couple of senators in the state. And yeah, despite Tessa's hard work, we don't know enough about this where we are now. So this is an urgent matter. This has been around for several months now on the gossip mill, and we still don't know much more about it. Maybe this committee knows more than the public does, but I'm in the public and I don't know, and I'd like to. And
Yeah, so this is something that dates back to a couple years. I mean, I remember
it does.
when you were in charge of GAC and you were trying to get information on it several years ago. We've been roadblocked on information, David, unfortunately, for quite literally years.
Well, when I've sort of turned up the heat since Ren threw it over to me, and I did get John Alford. I've gotten both of them on the phone once. John Alford gave me some information about I think the Porter Ranch post office closing in a similar parallel issue and how they were working with the community. And I said, well, can you please do that with us as well? But this just doesn't rank high enough on their list of priorities, which I think, frankly, is incredible how they can just ignore their constituents. So anyway, it's on my list of things to do, and I will keep you posted. I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to go away.
All right. Great. We are moving on.
Thank you, Tess.
To identifying standing rules that we think are important to actually get passed. And a reminder that we passed a pretty extensive 2-part update to our bylaws in February and March. Those have been submitted to the city. We're waiting any questions or issues before the city approves it, but hopefully it'll all go smoothly. And we did pass 2 standing rules in relation to agenda setting to codify that process. And in relation to vacancies, and particularly how notification for vacancies works in the application process. And those both, they have been passed, and as standing rules, I believe they are essentially in effect, although depending on how the bylaw approval process goes, I don't know if that would impact whether or not those are in effect, but I'm personally considering them in effect right now. So are there any standing rules? And I'm happy to give a quick list of some that we discussed at a previous meeting of ones that we might want to do. So just a quick list, actually establishing what our standing committees are, taking a vote and saying, these are the standing committees that we would like to continue having, which might be a little perfunctory, but I think would be good. Establishing an annual meeting procedure, which I think would be very good, even if it is just something that says, these are the items that we're going to be voting on at the annual meeting. The annual meeting will take place in X month, and just clarifying that. Personally, I would recommend us doing that sooner rather than later, because we're coming up on the time when we would normally do the annual meeting. We've also discussed establishing regional liaisons and a process for how someone could request to join a committee and what the requirements are for committee membership, like need to attend a certain number of meetings before being allowed to join, need to do certain training, sign a code of conduct. Another item we've discussed is establishing outreach reporting expectations and requirements. And then some others that are a little more process driven, like approved key holders for our mailbox storage and any office or meeting locations, and email access rules and procedures. And then the other one that I think is particularly important is the grievance panel, how to create the grievance panel pool, and who maintains the list, how does someone request to join it. So those are some of the ones that we've previously discussed. And I will throw it over to the committee for any commentary on which ones we think we would like to do sooner rather than later, which ones we think really aren't that integral. Chatty bunch, huh? All right, well, I do see a hand up from the public, so I'll throw it to you, David.
Great, thank you very much. I thought Ren did such a great job. I'm always looking for ways to compliment Ren because he and I are often at odds, but on this we were totally together, which is his description of all these upcoming follow-on bills was fantastic. Church parking lots for affordable housing, these one sentence things. I would love to hear these standing rules outlined. Maybe you did it already, but it just sounded like this was discussed, I'd like to know what stage these rules are at in being adopted. Something like maybe Rin style, if we can call it that. Just one sentence.
Sure, they are not at any stage of being adopted. We were previously discussing rules that we thought would be potentially of value.
So can you tell us what those rules are, what you discussed in one sentence each?
I was trying to just now, but I can do it one more time. Current standing committees, list the current standing committees, and it would be updated whenever new ones are added, or if we get rid of any. Setting an annual meeting procedure so that we know what happens at the annual meeting, who gets elected, when it takes place. Establishing regional liaisons, what those assigned areas are and how it would work. Committee membership, how to join a committee, what the requirements are for being allowed to join a committee, and any requirements for training, code of conduct. Outreach reporting, establishing outreach reporting requirements and expectations. Approved key holders, identifying who would be the approved key holders to our mailbox, storage, meeting location, and what the rules are around the keys. Email access, establishing rules around our email access, what it's used for, who gets access, and when you get your access removed. Grievance panel, establishing how the grievance panel pool would be, how people would sign up for it, and how the list would be maintained.
Good, and thank you. I love it.
Okay,
Let's have more of that.
great. That's what I previously said, but okay. Any other comments? Anything that people feel strongly that we should take up?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. The one about, I think the standing rule with respect to getting people more involved with adding to committees, I think that's something that we should kind of focus on, because again, we do have quite a few people that do come who are in all of our meetings consistently. And I think that they would be better served in our community as a committee member versus someone of the public. And this is just my personal opinion.
Okay, I mean, I think that would be a good one to take up. I would maybe suggest for our next meeting, we work on the committee membership one and the annual meeting procedure.
I agreed. I also like the idea of the annual meeting procedure because it just kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, so it's easy for people to figure out what happens at the annual meeting. And also we talked about potentially adding a rule in the annual meeting procedure that the meeting preceding the annual meeting, the one right before it, includes a quick, here's what's going to happen at next meeting so that people understand what's coming. Kelly.
And this is, I love this one because this has always been so murky. So I'm so excited that it's going to be clear. It's fantastic.
In the past, we had annual meetings. We used to serve food at every meeting, but the annual meeting would have better food and dessert, and we would hand out all of the, the thank you letters and get the council office and the mayor's office to give us, fancy testimonial, those fancy things to hand out to people. And it was a great opportunity to recognize people who are, working hard in the community and not getting much in the way of acknowledgement. So if we could add that to the annual meeting, I don't know how that fits in with what you're thinking, Catherine, but I think that would be one element too.
I think it would be good to include that this is also a meeting where traditionally those sorts of commendations and recognition of community member going above and beyond has been done. I don't know that we can mandate that we're going to do it, but I think we can say that that is when it is often done.
Yeah, I think if we set it up that that's the time to do it, then it also doesn't become a problem during the year where somebody goes, how come we didn't recognize this person or that person for what they did, last month or 2 months ago? And you can say, well, we're going to do all of that at the annual meeting. It's better. It's also, I think, easier for the council office to request a bunch of certificates at one time rather than, do, one every other month or every third month.
Yeah, I like that. Brent, thanks for making that suggestion, because I think it's really nice that when we used to do that, it was really nice. I know at the end last year when we changed boards, I had looked into getting certificates and doing that, but the city had suspended all of that. So I don't know if they brought it back in, if they're doing it again, but if they are, it'd be great.
I think they will do it. They're not doing it yet, but I think they'll get back to it. It's a no-brainer politically.
Yeah. Sorry, David, did you put your hand up again or did you just not lower it before?
Yeah, I actually put it up again because somebody said something that prompted me to want to put it up again. So if I can talk really quickly, would you mind?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering if we could have on everybody a standing rule that there be on each committee's agenda somewhere in it a report on pending legislation affecting the committee and the community. And even if there isn't any, or nobody found or nobody did any research, at least it's on the agenda each time, including this one, then people will start checking the Sacramento website to find out what have they got coming down the pike for us.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting thing to add. Yeah,
it's actually a great thing to add. Yeah, then we're reminded of it every month when we're preparing the agendas. Like what do people need to be on the lookout for now or in the works? I mean, I'm preparing something somewhat analogous for planning and land use, which is a list of ongoing projects and all of their various aliases, and they're also known as, because the post office, for example, has it has the LA City Planning case file. It's known as the Mariota. It's known as the Riverside Drive. It's got several addresses. And sometimes when items are agendized, it's not clear exactly what it is. So I think that's a good idea, David. Let's do it.
all right. Any other new business that people would like us to take up as governmental affairs? This is not necessarily related to the standing rules, just as governmental affairs. Any other requests for something for us to take up? Hands up. All right, Jonathan, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. I did something. I've said it before, so I'll just repeat it here, that I think it's important that the neighborhood council create a CIS that addresses these policies that are clearly according to the police, interfering with their ability to do their job. They're both policies, and there's another word that they use for them. They call them the gas going policies and COVID ordinances. That's what they call them. Thank you.
Jonathan, have you talked to the Public Safety Committee? Because that would probably be where that would live, since it's related to the.
I have, and I'll go back there again. Nothing shows up on the agenda, so I can do that. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And David, go ahead.
Thanks again. I'm wondering if there can be an education component to everybody's meeting, and including this one, because I noticed the questions come up are, in my mind, reasonable questions for a meeting such as this. What about this? What are the rules on this? Where we would have an expert come by to set us all straight on what the rules are. And they talk for 10 minutes and then they go to dinner wherever they go. And we learn something and we accrue this knowledge from meeting to meeting. And ideally, every committee in Toluca Lake would have such a thing.
So I guess I just want to clarify, when you say an education component, are you asking for education about something specific, or just to have a presenter that provides education about some topic related to that committee's area?
The latter.
Okay. Okay. I mean, personally, I like that idea. I think one of the issues that we've had in the past is it's hard to identify a speaker to come. But yeah, I think it would be great for us to start doing a lot more education. And, one of the things that I have been championing is our YouTube channel, which offers us the opportunity where those presentations could be pulled out of a larger video into a 5 or 10 minute chunk that could be shared in our newsletter and could be more accessible to folks that maybe weren't able to make the meeting that evening that it actually happened.
Yeah, that could be another
right.
one, a separate one.
Oh, sure. Sorry, did you have another thing that you wanted us as governmental to work on?
No, I like that idea too. It sounded different enough from what I was saying to maybe have its own heading and category and be a separate item, because it's important enough. And the other one was, I'm really noticing from my study of land use that we are functioning in a small, as part of a giant pool. And I think we need to know more about Sacramento and Washington, and maybe even on a global level, anything at all about what's going on legislatively in terms of government affairs, even if it's just a 2-minute presentation on this bill in Washington and this, and then they can go home. Just to provide some sort of macro context. I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you.
Have any speakers to recommend, David?
Thanks for the question, Tess. Yeah, I'm meeting some in my Zoom meetings, all up and down California, and I think I could find a couple to recommend. So if you let me know who to recommend them to, I'll be glad to do it.
Why don't you send them to the Government Affairs Committee, all of us?
Okay, just tell me how to do it and I'll do it.
Our emails are all on the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council website.
Okay, how many of you are there?
Tess, why don't you just have David send it to you and me, just because we have some individuals who aren't actually board members, so we're not publishing their personal emails.
Well, of course not.
Right, I'm just saying the entire committee's emails are not available on the website.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Because we have members that are not board members.
Oh, I
So
see. I see
their
what you-
personal email is not posted on the website.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So yeah, we'll take care of it, David. All right.
Okay, thanks. Just let me know.
Good.
Great.
I'll take care of meeting minutes this time, Catherine.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, let's close the meeting at 8:04 p.m.
Very
Thank
good.
you all. Have a lovely evening.
Have a
Thank
good night.
you.